Yes, a lovely evening to you out there. You're welcome to another edition of Your Right program on 24 News Radio and Television. Yes, it is another edition of You and Your Right. And today we are exploring another angle of the human right that is centered on the landlord and tenant's right. Yes, it is still your girl Grace Mwafo, and of course, I have a lovely guest in the studio today. Our guest today is a legal practitioner with over 10 years of experience in the field. He is the director of several companies, including Kitty Face Lifestyle Limited and Terra Palace Properties Limited, and others as well. So you know our guest is well grounded in the things of landlord and tenants' right. He is also a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, Ado Ekiti branch, and also a member of the Ado Progressive Union, Fountain of Hope International, and a member of the All Progressive Congress Party, APC. Yes, it's very interesting to know that our guest today made history as the youngest governorship candidate in the 2018 Ekiti State gubernatorial election. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make welcome Barrister Temitope. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, listener.
All right. So, Barrister Omotayo, today we are going to be explaining the topic that sees understanding tenants' rights, your responsibility, and your right and resolution as it centers in that area. So, I wanted to throw light on the intricacies of the concept of landlord-tenant right.
Yes, the relationship between the landlord and tenant is basically contracts, and it's a contract that is being backed up with right. And naturally, when you talk about right, when you talk about contract, there is this term, Latin maxim we usually use, say consensus ad be the meeting of two minds that the parties must agree about the relationship, about terms
Okay.
of how they intend to conduct their relationship in that contract.
Okay.
And tenancy relationship, like I said, is a special kind of contract. We've discovered over the years that they do not make have a special type of contract. I mean, written.
Okay.
And if a landlord and a tenant do not have a written down contract, this is statutory. It's a state law that
Yes.
usually is between territory. So
Okay.
we the landlord we usually have a special law. Tenancy state we have in the we have in Ondo, we have in each state have their own special law that is to guide the relationship between the parties that are involved,
Okay.
basically the landlord and the tenant. So I believe it's statutory. If anything that happens between them to be, and again, if parties, you can decide not to use the statutory provisions. That is, you can go in a separate contract. That's why I said consensus addendum. You can leave the statutory provision. For example, the law if a landlord intends to evict a tenant, if there is no agreement as to that, if it's a yearly tenant, you give 6 month notice. If it's 6 month tenant, if they enter to 6 months, so like that, there's a way the parties could go outside that if they agree between one another. Being a lawyer, we've seen instant if there is anything, any, if you intend to determine the contract. That is, if is the same thing. Yeah, a legal term, but sometimes we use the word tenancy for short period, for example, maybe less than 3 years. But when it's 3 years and above, we usually use year notice. It depends on the consensus of the pieces that are involved, because like the title of the program, your rights and duty. And if you look at the our constitution, for example, it gives parties to own a property, give the landlord, any citizen of Nigeria or so, is a small fraction of it. And this fraction, government, actually, they are always being careful to the persons in the landlord that want to do business, citizens, because it's a right that you have a house. Why there is this concept in law, they always say Englishman's house is his own castle. That is, if you are still the lord of that house.
Okay. Yes, as it concerns landlords and tenants relationship. So now, Barrister, we know that they are that are from the federal and the state level. So can you differentiate between the state landlord tenancy relationship?
Basically, I can say there is no law that generalize the issue of landlord and tenancy relationship.
Okay.
We have in Nigeria, we have Land Use Act.
Okay.
That was enacted in 1979. That's the common land use act that is applicable in federation. And if you look at that law, it gives to the state government, especially to that is governor of the state that owns all the lands in the territory of the state. Okay. Even if the federal government is going to give the federal government, or federal government intends to do anything, it's still the governor that will still mark anywhere they want to give to them. So generally, land is local. There is what they call latitude in law, that is in between the territory, and anybody that owns that territory is the one that can be in control. And when you look at it, and the issue of land, when you look at our constitution, there's what they call exclusive list. It's not land. Exclusive list mean only the items that is only the federal government that can make law, like military, so many shipping and the likes. But when you look at all the items, exclusive legislative list in the constitution is not there. Land is not there. And the issue, you now have a concurrent list, which both the state and the federal government can legislate upon. And the only thing that could make someone to a land or a tenancy relationship law, I think it will only relate to Abuja, which Abuja they count it as a separate territory. Okay. Like we always say, it's federal territory. So basically, it's a state law that usually guides the relationship between tenant and relationship. And when you look at it, when you look at if there is a fraction or there is a disagreement, you could see that it's mostly the state courts that they usually resolve such disputes. Though there is nothing wrong in taking a matter to high court, it's still the state high court. Okay. The courts that have jurisdiction within to deal with tenancy matter, they are state courts. And mostly when you look at it, it depends on the jurisdiction, on the monetary jurisdiction. For example, now in Ekiti, we have a rent tribunal. Yeah. We have a rent tribunal, the court that resolves dispute between the landlord and the tenant. And if the monetary that rental value is more than a million, I think the person has to go to higher court. So is the state law the relationship between the landlord and the tenants.
Oh, okay. I hope you got
except
that.
in Abuja.
Oh, okay. So I hope you got that. It's the state law that guides the relationship between landlords and tenants, except not applicable to the federal capital. Of course, there are rules, and then there are places that the rules are not applicable to in the same way as it is applied to other areas as well. So we know that there are a lot of areas that are really critical in the aspect of landlord-tenant relationship. What key area in your years of experience can you pinpoint that are very critical in the aspect of this relationship?
Like when I started, I said consensus addendum. What we usually see, we've seen some, because we have properties that we manage. We see some tenants, they always want the landlord to. It's not always the way. If there's no even agreement between them, law will have guided it. For example, if a roof is leaking, is the external, is major, is the duty of the landlord to fix a leaking roof.
Yes.
Is the duty of the landlord. Is the duty of the landlord if there is a structural defect in the house, is the duty of the landlord to fix it. I will talk about the issue of tax later, because in Ekiti State, when we said is part of Nigerian law that they should be paying withholding tax on rent, which I will talk about later. Okay. So there are some things when for example, if they've handed over to you a fit property, and that's why the buyer beware. Caveat, that is, you must check very well before you move in. Okay. If, for example, my office, if we let out an apartment to you and you've checked it, maybe you are now using the key, or you do not manage the key very well, it is your duty to fix it. The only thing you could inform us is to call on our office, or you call on your landlord, that do you have the people that fit, the workmans, people that work for the landlord that can fix it. If your work is not good, it's the duty of the landlord to fix it. But some landlord, it's the duty of the tenant to fix it. But some landlord, they are so magnanimous, and they could do it wants to use it. Like if a landlord like suck away, but many a times when all these relationships are not well defined, people do to the landlord overlapping. That's what that usually cause the disagreement. I want to say part of what we do not always agree upon in this part of the world is the issue of the number of persons that in an apartment. Okay. For example, in a 2-bedroom apartment that you have seen 7-8 persons. living in that. So there is no way it will affect the facility of the landlord. So these are the things that we need. If there should be a relationship, it needs to be well spelled out.
Defined. Okay. Okay. In a situation whereby the landlord has refused to fix some structure defect, what should the tenant do? A particular instance, the issue has actually caused a lot of things, a lot of issues in the compound that tenants are living.
And if anybody that fails, that's why every person should have a lawyer. You should have a lawyer, like you have a family doctor. You have for example, if anybody has done something wrong, if you don't even have a lawyer, you can write to the person. You'll be able to have evidence that you have complained. Some persons may assume you can claim it from the landlord. You can write to claim it. It may not really go to the risk. And thank God, if you go to public women's commission, there are so many options that can even help without even going to court and resolve such issues. But you must first of all know some persons, if they want to do maybe 500 naira something in their house, they prefer calling on the landlord. So, but if the agreement is very important, and one of these that we seriously emphasize is the issue of tenancy agreement. And like some people will say, you do not write. It's bound to be a disagreement. Is your wording, but like they used to say, a smallest pencil is better than the sharpest brain. If it is written down, everybody will be able to know. You can always refer back. You can always go back to it. So it's very good to have an agreement. It doesn't tenant. Get a lawyer close to you for you.
Okay. So talking about action centered on some terms before time. So in a situation like this, what should they, and also give us a kind of a rundown of the process of eviction?
If the landlord, we've seen instances that some landlord will come because they wanted a tenant to move out of the house, they will go there and remove the roof. No, it is abnormal. It is criminal, because the relationship of landlord and tenant is purely civil or civil realm. It become a, someone is preventing you to leave a house. Approach a nearest police station and arrest the landlord, because that's the rule is you must know it's to your hands. Because if someone is in the process, fight ensues, and someone said, if you are if you do not have agreement with the landlord, there is no contract as to whether it could. If they do not give 6 months notice as a yearly tenant, the such notice void, like the law will say, is void ab initio. That shows it at all. If they do not give you a relevant notice, if they've given you 6 months, if they give you a tenant is being issued 6 months notice, after that 6 months, if the tenant, a landlord, a lawyer, there is another notice. They call it owner's intention to recover possession.
Okay.
Owner's intention to this notice. If that they issue you, the next thing to do is to go to court.
Okay.
And there is no court that will tell the landlord, tell the tenant that you don't have a right, and landlord that you do not have a right to your own property, but you have to follow the legal process. If you fail to follow the legal process, the consequences is there.
Okay, Tayo, it's really an amazing time having you in the studio with all this knowledge being shared. I hope you are learning a lot as well. You watching us from wherever you are, listening to us at the time of the moment. So this is still And You're Right on 24 News Radio and Television. We'll have more questions for our guests today, but we'll take that after this. Just with us.
Human rights. Animal want touches. Human rights. Can't touch me. Human rights. Animal can't touch us. Human rights.
Yes, welcome back from that musical break. If you just joining us, this is You and Your Right. And of course, we have our guest today, Barry. You're welcome once again.
Thank you.
All right, so now we've discussed some intricacies of landlord tenants, right? Now we are going on some dispute resolution taxes. So one of them, Bara, is what are the ways of documenting evidence in case of if this disputes comes up? What are the ways a tenant or landlord can document their evidence so that they could actually be able to face the court in terms of dispute?
Yes, I think it's so simple, and since we've had the new evidence that we can the electronic generated evidence is you have a damage that you believe is a structure on the leased property or the property that you rented,
Okay.
and you hold my word. Right is not you just be claiming. Some people are writing and believe they are making complaints. The ranting is not complaint.
Okay.
When you notice anything, write the landlord. Okay. Write the landlord, let it be in black and white. If you have the landlord email, mail the landlord. Let the landlord see it. You can send a WhatsApp. Don't make WhatsApp as your primary communication. After a wife, your phone is lost or your phone got damaged, we may not be able to retrieve that evidence. Write the landlord.
Okay.
Do the video. Can do the video and keep it in your email. And another thing is this thing. Many areas, different areas, they have association. If someone is being doing, if your last not doing something good, you can always have chairman of the landlord association solve that dispute. And if you have a tenant too that is not there, and majorly these days we've seen instances that any will lead to breaking of law and order, or that deals with landlord tenancy relationship. Sometimes there are some units, especially Nigeria Civil Defense.
Okay.
They have a unit that they do a sort of people in town. They do ADR for them if they handle some landlord and tenant relationship, because if you can prevent some, if you can resolve some issues before it even turns to criminal. I think they have a unit that resolves such issues too. You can go to NBA Center, Ado Ekiti.
Okay.
There's a ADR there, alternative at Ado Ekiti branch. You can go to Ministry of Justice. They call the parties, they can call the landlord and the tenants, call them together and resolve to do a video, have a photographic evidence. So you can record and they connect the evidence, and people continue to, everybody in the court will see it.
Watch.
So they watch it.
Deposit is all about them topic of this discussion.
Yes, that security is termination of the tenancy relationship is not always the way it used to be at the inception. Some of that items in the property,
Okay.
managing it, time it will leave. By the time you look at it, landlord, they are usually at loss. They are the one that always bear the brunt. Because take for instance, we have a property sometimes that the rent was 300,000 naira, but the extent of the damage, we spent almost 1,000, so which is profitable for the landlord.
Okay.
And because of this, for a tenant to call to be cautious, like you say caution fee,
Okay.
we call it in our own agreement, we always say refundable caution fee. If you are leaving, we give you back your money. That shows is a sense of security.
Okay.
Fee for the landlord. If the tenant damage, or a tenant damages it, or sometimes we ask the landlord we ask the tenant to go and feast our money.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So is it possible that one can actually use an apartment and then at the end of the person's stay there's damage?
And that's why when there's no way someone can use property for 2 or 3 years that the paint will be okay again. Another person needs to use. They need to repaint it. But what we are talking about, there's what the accounting people, they call it depreciation. There is what they call depreciation. Depreciation occur as a result of some minor depreciation. The value will be lesser. It will not be as. But in case when you have damaged virtually all the sockets in the house, all the keys you've done, that one I believe we will not say that is a normal thing. It won't be a normal depreciation. So that's my thought.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Barrister. So I would like you to throw on the current issue that is happening now, current trend, increasing rent without any triggering a lot of reactions. People, what do you think about this?
And when you look at the rents, you have to look at the economic value.
Okay.
For example, we time that the tenants, they always want the landlord to, even when they pay their rent, they always to use the whole rent for repairs.
Okay.
Which is not usually possible. Someone that has invested the money and you are now expecting, for example, you are expecting the put and the innovation, the improvement. We are only talking about if a rent is being reviewed, like in our own office. If we are writing a rent review, the reason is for proper management. It could be for proper management and to reflect the economic reality. For example, if 200 years ago, let's value it in terms of dollar.
Okay.
Let's value in terms of dollar. It will be more than 200,000 naira. It will be more than then we more than 2 years ago. We still want to be part of our and what do we expect the landlord? The landlord will go to the same market
to buy.
The landlord will send his or her work to school too. The school fees are inflationary burden on the economy that is making the landlord increase the rent. But however, if there are minor improvement they could do, a tenant has been living in a property for 3 or 4 years, I think the landlord should set apart some amount to do little renovation, maybe painting of the surroundings. So that's my opinion about it. I believe in majorly now economic reality of the country.
Okay. The question, the matter at hand is not about not increase in rent. It is the fact that the increase is made when there is no change. There's no renovation, nothing. People living there for years, they are getting their rent increased, and then nothing is done about. Like, is there something that is actually being done, or that is not just working out?
One thing is, is contract. Like I said initially, is contract. If it will be, it will be a duress if you are being forced to honor that contract.
Okay.
Both parties, both the landlord and the tenant, if your landlord is not doing what you expect him or just go and look for another apartment, because we cannot force someone to either of the parties, the landlord or the tenant. If the landlord is breaching the contract, the tenant can take the landlord to court.
Okay.
And I believe the most convenient thing is, if you are living in a place 3 or 4 years and you have been making complaints for structural defects and other things, so and the landlord is not yielding, look for another apartment, look for a new landlord. The time God will provide for you to
With rent smart.
on rent is a it's not a new development in Lagos and some other places. Withholding tax, I think withholding tax act, which is applicable to states, collect just most is the temporary rent.
Okay.
Is what ideally, because we've seen instances, the tenant will be calling on the landlord to come and pay the withholding tax when the revenue people come, and ideally that's not what it should be. If the landlord has not collected the rent, issue is the tenant that,
Okay.
because it's part of the rent, is part of the tax that a tenant should pay. But one of the convenient ways of on their behalf from the tenant, because ideally what the law says is the tax on rent is being collected by the landlord from the tenant. The landlord collected it from receipt of that tax, of that money collected.
Yes.
From the tenant. The tenant, when the tenant is now paying, when they allow the tenant to withdraw that money.
Okay.
It's there's a term they use in accounting. Allow the tenant to withdraw, to deduct allowable jump. The tenant to deduct the amount he has paid the landlord. Okay. But the tenant must get a receipt, not for the rent, but for the tax. Okay. From the landlord. So ordinarily is what the landlord should collect. You add 10% of the rent you are collecting from the landlord, and you give a separate receipt for it, because it's your duty. It's the duty of the landlord to pay to government. It's like the duty of an employer to pay to the government for payee personal income tax of your staff. It's your duty to pay, because you are meant to deduct this discover we don't landlords, tenants, they always ask the landlord, especially in Ekiti. They will tell you, even the new people do not know this, what I'm saying, because they will be telling them, call your landlord. Have they paid? That's why in the agreement that we do these days, we tell you the rent you are paying is net of all taxes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Barrister. That was really a great time having you here in the studio. We do make time to again for maybe another episode of the You're Right on 24 News Radio and TV. Thank you so much once again.
You're welcome.
All right, ladies and gents, this is we drawing the curtain in today's program. You and You're Right. We do hope you have a great time. Let's do this again. 24. Same time, same station.